All right, councillors. Well, it's 6:33 and we have more than a quorum in attendance, so I'll declare the meeting open. Can I just check with councillors De Cruz and Stamoulis? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All good.
De Cruz,
Okay.
yep.
Thanks very much for that. I'll begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land and paying my respects to their elders, both past and present. Are there any apologies this evening, councillors? No, no apologies. I'll proceed with the notice of webcasting for the benefit of the citizens who've registered to speak tonight. We'd like to let you know at the beginning of the meeting that these proceedings are broadcast on YouTube, and so any comments you make are in the public domain and may have legal ramifications. Disclosures of interest, councillors. Are there any disclosures tonight? No? Excellent. I'll ask everyone to please join me in a moment of quiet contemplation. Thank you, councillors. That brings us to the public forum. I believe we have 2 registered speakers tonight. I don't have those in front of me, so Catherine, I'll just ask you to read out the name of the first registered speaker, please.
Mayor, the first registered speaker is Stephen.
Stephen, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Can't hear you very well, Stephen.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Still can't hear you very well, although that is a little bit better.
Hello?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Pretty faintly, but okay.
He's coming through loud and clear to me, Darcy. I'm not sure about
Right.
And me. Yep.
Okay.
I can hear you, Stephen.
Okay.
Let me start again. Can you all hear me?
Yep, no, we can hear you. Thanks very much, Stephen. Please proceed.
Look, I understand today's meeting is regarding the harmonisation of rates and as prescribed by the state government. I'm representing my wife who has a property in the Leichhardt district, and the issue, we understand there needs to be a harmonisation of the rates, but the issue is the quantum of the increase in rates. And if you look at it from let's look at it a 1-bedroom apartments, which there are many in the Leichhardt area, we're looking at a 20% increase in rates, which is, looking at today's, that's about even 10 to 15 times CPI. Now, that is significant, not including the increase in the domestic water and domestic waste increases in charges. So, whilst we understand there's an harmonisation, the council will also need to look at its expenditure side of the equation and look at how to decrease the expenditure to reduce the impost on the ratepayers with the rates. So, and as you've also documented in your submission, the $850 minimum is much more than some of your accompanying councils. City Council 766. So the question is, why Inner West is going for $850 and not something a bit more reasonable? Why is it not going for $710, which is common in Marrickville at the moment? So 2 things. You need to review your expenditures and see where you can reduce your costs, especially with the capital works that have undergone in last year and continuing this year, and see how you can reduce those. Secondly is find more efficiencies within the council to reduce the impost on ratepayers. And thirdly, look at how you can, match or coordinate services with your accompanying councils to get a better deal from your suppliers. So that's it with me. We object to the increase. We understand there needs to be harmonisation, but we inject in the amount of increase to the rates as proposed by the council. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. Catherine, can I ask you to read out the name of the second registered speaker?
Second registered speaker is Sylvia.
Sylvia, are you there? Sylvia, can you hear me?
Yep, I was mute. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can I start?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Dear Mayor and Councillors, my name is Sylvia Levam and I have been a residential ratepayer of the Inner West Council for a little over 18 years. My property is located in the former Marrickville Council. After virtually attending the extraordinary meeting of last week, I have come to the conclusion that as a concerned ratepayer, I need to do something about the predicament we are in order to avoid future bigger problems. The lack of decision about items of extreme importance, like some of the ones tabled on the 23rd of February, worries me. I want to clarify my position so you can understand where I stand. I do not support the proposed new rate structure. I am one of the 1,285 respondents that said no. I do not support setting a minimum residential business rate either. So I am one of the 1,016 people who said no. I strongly oppose to rate harmonization project. The term rate harmonization is misleading as ratepayers may interpret that they are getting a payment relief instead of a payment increase. This concept was not communicated or publicized properly. I want fairness, as I imagine you all do, which will be achieved if the rate harmonization and the unification of rates are rejected. I am and always have been opposed to the council's amalgamation. I strongly believe that all residents and ratepayers, albeit 5 years later, should have a say in the Inner West amalgamation. A referendum should be held not later than September 2021. If Council votes to set minimum rates and votes to implement a new rate system without a referendum, this will be a giant breach of trust and duty of care with the community that the councillors represent. Despite instructions from the state government, increasing rates and rate harmonization without consultation has never been an option discussed and accepted by the community. So please, 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 pause the process until the referendum. The proposition put for consideration tonight is inequitable and unreasonable because it accepts the premise that it's okay to raise the rates for all ratepayers in Marrickville and some in Leichhardt to the benefit of those in Ashfield. There should only be winners in an amalgamation, not losers. It is unfair that ratepayers from one former council end up subsidizing others. And I want to finish with this. I call on all Inner West councillors to vote and reject the rate harmonization, vote and reject the unification of minimum rate, and vote in favor of a referendum regarding a demerger of the Inner West Mega Council and the return to individual councils as before. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sylvia, for your contribution. That brings us to the one item on the agenda tonight, councillors. Councillor Macri has signalled to me that he has a motion to move. Councillor Macri.
Thanks, Chair. If I'll send it through to Catherine if she can put it up.
Catherine, you able to display Councillor Macquarie's motion?
Yep, it's on the screen now.
Can I ask you to try to format it so that the entirety of the motion can be seen?
Can do.
Thank you very much. Councillor Macquarie, do you wish to speak to it?
I'll just talk people through it. Basically, it relies on point 1, which asks Council to write to the Premier and Treasurer, Minister of Local Government and IPART, noting that we are being forced to harmonise the rates, and many of our communities see this as unfair. Harmonisation will lead to a major increase in rates for some residents in our community. If they insist on harmonisation, then we must be able to phase the increase in over 4 years and observe they have not yet legislated to allow us to do this. Point 2 is include in letters to IPART the Council's community consultation report on the rates harmonisation, as well as our preference for the minimum rates as tabled in point 3 of the Council Officer's recommendation. Should the rates harmonisation have to proceed further, that Council requests from the local government minister a specific timeline when the legislative changes to the rating system will be tabled in Parliament. 3, notes that the New South Wales Government is yet to adopt key recommendations of the 2016 IPART Local Government Rating System report, which puts forward detailed review of local government rating system and how to make the system fairer and more efficient. 4, response in writing to everyone who made a submission to Council about proposed changes to the rating structure, advising them of this resolution. 5, ensures that all future communications to residents about rate harmonisation include reference to Council's opposition to the New South Wales Government's Council rate harmonisation process. And 6, notes that the failure to set a new minimums rates will result in the default minimum rate of $5.65, which will not equitably distribute the rate burden across the former council areas or require the majority of the new ratepayers to contribute adequately to the cost of services made available to them by the Inner West Council. If I have a seconder to it, I'll speak to it, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion?
I will second.
That's seconded by Councillor Drury. Councillor Macquarie?
Chair, it is a difficult thing. And as I said previously at the last meeting, this is not something that council or any councillor or any group is doing on this council. It is a state government requirement, the harmonisation. The only job we are tasked with is setting a minimum rate which will fairly and equitably distribute the burden of rates across our community. I've looked at the report, and I look at the report and the table on page 13. We are in the middle, basically. There's probably about 3 councils that are less than us. The majority of councils are actually higher, have higher minimums than us. I'm relying on the phasing to come in to help assist the Marrickville residents in coping with the impact of the actual rate increase, and noting that they will get some relief when the new waste levy is implemented. And harmonisation is a difficult thing, but it's swings and roundabouts. I know there's been a particular noting about concerns from the residents about deterioration of services, but if we look back at the table on page 9 and it goes across to page 10, you'll see that a number of services have been expanded to Marrickville residents which weren't available to them before. That was part of the amalgamation. The other significant savings are the insurance costs for council has been significantly reduced by the amalgamation. I'm not here to speak on behalf of the amalgamation, but I still think it is a process that is happening. And our service levels are under constant review, and we do need to do better for our residents. And that's been noted. Councillor Passis has been on that. and she's on the money where the actual services have been a little bit under pressure in dealing with the larger council. The cheapest rate really is the City of Sydney. And if we look at that, we understand why, because the more people are paying rates, the cheaper it gets. But no one wants to go into the City of Sydney with 40-storey buildings into the inner west. So that's what you need to actually get critical mass to actually make it cheaper. And if you can imagine a block, if there's one person paying to maintain that block, and council services need to actually be charged at that rate. And the good example is of Ashfield before the amalgamation. The smaller council.
I'll move an extension of time of 1 minute, seconded by Councillor Drury. All those in favour, against, declare that carried.
Yep, thank you. A good example of this was Ashfield Council, and that's why they did have the highest rates of the three merged councils, because of their size and their inability to get economies of scale. It's there in front of us. I think we need to work harder for the residents and get the outcomes they need. And I think the service levels, I think we can work on those and improve them where everyone can be happy. No one is happy about paying higher rates. I admit that. But to talk about de-amalgamation or having referendums, you know, I think the last time we got a costing on it was about $1 million. And if I have $1 million to spend on a referendum, I would rather spend that on the services in the inner west, where if people really want to de-amalgamate, that's fine. There are 4 state members involved in this area: Jenny Leon, Jamie Parker, Joe Halen, and Ron Honing. They need to approach them and take $1 million out of their budget. I'm not going to take $1 million out of council's budget for a decision that I know we have no control. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Macri. Councillor Drury, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'll reserve.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Drury. Now, councillors, we've got a primary motion which has been moved by Councillor Macri, seconded by Councillor Drury, which would see council send off a submission to IPART indicating a preference for a minimum rate and making a series of other representations to the government as well. And I note that the final point of that motion is in regards to what the minimum rate would be if no application was submitted, which is the $565 figure. So is there anyone who would, we've debated this at great length less than a week ago. So I assume that people don't want to be around.
Darcy, I'd like to ask some questions because I think there's some errors in that.
Sorry, just a moment, Councillor De Cruz. So I assume that there's no hankering amongst the cohort of us who want to be here until be here for very long. So can I ask, is there anyone who would like to...
This Councillor Passes, I have a foreshadowed motion I'd like to put up when this is over.
Okay, no, please proceed. That's exactly what I was about to call for. So please proceed with your foreshadowed motion.
Well, if the motion can be put up, there's no way getting away from the fact this is 2 separate issues. To me, I don't even know why the amalgamation has come into this equation. And I find it very interesting that we've got a certain group of councillors that their answer to this dilemma and this serious issue that we have to face is, oh, let's amalgamate, which they've raised, and I'll say to the Greens, about twice on council. If they have nothing to offer to try and resolve this problem, de-amalgamation is not the problem. The 3 former councillors would have had to raise their rates even more. They were unsustainable. The amalgamation will work if you have councillors that are really sincere in delivering for the residents. And the last speaker, the lady that spoke, brought up a very good point. If we're going to put extra pain on residents, we have to put pain on ourselves and how we are spending the rates. This is the first thing we have to look at. We cannot expect people to accept pain if we don't take it ourselves. And we have not been doing that. I have paperwork and paperwork of where we have really been irresponsible. Now, my motion is the minimum 790. Some people will have to feel pain, but very small pain. Ashfield residents in the Ashfield area, 60% of the dwellings are units. In fact, Ashfield has 40% of high rise than the whole LGA. Ashfield's been paying through the nose for a long time. And please, Mr. Mayor, don't say they got the pool. They didn't want that size. They wanted the pool refurbished. No one asked them, did they want a second Canberra Institute of Sport? So please don't use that. We need to be fair. And as I said, amalgamation or no amalgamation, rates would have increased if we have to continue our services and if we do not tighten our own belts. And I'm pretty sure if we looked at it and we brought an independent person in, a financial manager, which I think we need, to tell us we can't be playing our politics with our wish lists because it makes us look good, is shocking. And I also will state, it has turned so political, I cannot understand how the state member.
Councillor Passis, your time has expired. Do you require more time?
Mr. Mayor, it's been breaking up in the last couple of minutes that I was speaking. Please do not make this political. The amalgamation will not happen. We have to be accountable. We have to be sensible and take your mind off the September election. Do not rely on will I get elected or not. Do the right thing by the people because but for the grace of God, we mightn't wake up tomorrow morning and be able to stand for the next election.
Sorry. Thanks, Councillor. Is there a seconder for Councillor Passis's motion? There's no seconder that will
I am absolutely shocked.
I'll call the meeting to order.
15 councillors, no one will second a motion that is the only fair motion put forward.
Councillor Passis.
Councillor Byrne, I have a foreshadowed motion, if I might.
Okay. Councillor, so we've got a primary motion. Councillor Passis's foreshadowed motion has lapsed. Councillor Hesse wishes to move a foreshadowed motion.
And I believe that Catherine has that as well. So it's fairly brief. This is significantly different to what we moved last week. It recognises that we have the power under the Act to hold a poll on any matter, indeed, as it says in the Act. Councillor Macquarie's rather fanciful claim that it cost $1 million is not really worth considering unless they're the most expensive vote count in history. Of course, we're talking about holding it in September and we're already paying for a local government election. The costs would be minimal and there is absolutely everything right about consulting residents. It's been interesting to listen to the discussion tonight so far because really what we're still talking about is a rates rise. We're just talking about how fast the temperature is applied. The only way that this matter should be resolved is by going straight to residents and saying, are you happy with staying in Inner West Council? That's never been put to residents and it should be.
Chair, point of order.
Councillor Macquarie.
I think that's a misleading statement as far as council cannot go to people and say if they want to be in the Inner West Council. You can't opt out of the Inner West Council.
Okay. Thanks for that, Councillor Macquarie. I think Councillor Hesse's motion is to conduct a plebiscite, what he refers to as a poll, which that is within the legal remit of council. So I'll rule that he is in order. Councillor Hesse, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. And indeed, it is according to the Act. It is the word poll is used in the Act. So, I mean, I think many of the arguments in the primary motion are, of course, quite reasonable if you assume that the amalgamated council itself is a reasonable act. Now, we Greens have consistently voted with the view and acted throughout this term of council with the view that Inner West, to make Inner West Council the best council it can be and to operate in the best way it can. And indeed, if you look at the progressive outcomes of this council, and there have been quite a few, we've invariably voted for them. That, however, doesn't address the problem of an amalgamation for which every ratepayer in Marrickville and many in Leichhardt will pay significantly more, no matter which level is struck. And that's why it's the only democratic option, is to go to the residents. Now, of course, it's a non-binding poll. That puts pressure on the state government. It's a brave state government that ignores the will of the people, no matter who is there. And I think it would be behoven on all councillors to actually hear the will of the people, to give them the opportunity to actually say what they think. Now, because I think the unarguable reality of staying as an amalgamated council is that people in Marrickville and much of the former Leichhardt will pay more. And that has been authorised by all those councillors who will support, who indeed will refuse a say to residents. It's a pretty simple argument, really. I think, I think we really have to go there. I think it's uncomfortable, but I think we should go there, and I think we need to hear the people. And I think it's one of those things where you can spin it any way you like, but when people get those rates notices in their mailbox on July the 1st or shortly thereafter, a lot of people who can't necessarily afford it but may own valuable properties, I think of most of the neighbours in my street who are older and from often born overseas and are not on social media and don't pay much attention.
Councillor Hesse, your time has expired. Do you require further time?
I will save...
Yes, move to give Councillor Hesse a minute extension. This Councillor Steele.
Extension of time, moved by Councillor Steer, seconded by Councillor Stamoulis. All those in favour, against, declare that carried. Please proceed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think really it's about looking at those people for whom they may have an expensive property, but when they bought it, it didn't cost much and they haven't got much of an income. And I think it's important to give those people a say, because the only time they'll actually take much notice is around when they get that rates notice and when they vote on election day. Whether they vote for or against amalgamation, I know we Greens will absolutely abide by that decision once and for all, but they've never had the chance. So I hope that people will vote against the primary motion and vote for the foreshadowed motion, as I think this is the way we apply pressure on the government. With all due respect, the primary motion is really a series of asks for the government, which they will say no to because there is no pressure. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Hesse, before I ask whether there's a seconder for your motion, I would like to seek advice from the council officers. Councillor Hesse, you've asserted that this is very different from the previous motion. I can't claim to have a photographic memory of the previous.
Yeah, the words that we used were that we write to the minister last time and seek an election. And
I'll warn you if you can desist.
No, I'm not seeking to interrupt you. I was trying to help.
Well, you are interrupting. I'll call the meeting to order. Please desist. I'll have to warn you. My question to the council officers is, how does this motion relate to the defeated foreshadowed motion, the two defeated foreshadowed motions from the previous meeting, proposing steps towards de-amalgamation? And my second question is, how does this relate to the relevance of the extraordinary meeting tonight, given there is no reference in the foreshadowed motion at all to the rate system or making any decision about a minimum rate?
Through the chair, I think the resolution or the motion as proposed is sufficiently different to the motion that was put at the last extraordinary council meeting for it not to be ruled out of order for being moved within the 3 months. But I do take the latter point you make, and I do question whether a motion that bears no relationship whatsoever to rates or rates harmonisation, how that can actually be moved at a meeting where it's only considering one item.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hesse, can I ask you, just before I make a ruling, just to address how you believe the foreshadowed motion is relevant to the subject of the extraordinary meeting tonight, which is rates harmonisation?
Well, I thank the General Manager for his advice. I do believe that point 2 addresses that, because it refers, I mean, the words rates harmonisation occur explicitly in point 2 and asks for a freeze of that rates harmonisation process. So I'd argue that it clearly relates to the matter we're talking about tonight, with all due respect. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for that. I'm going to rule that that's in order, and I will also move an amendment to the foreshadowed motion to just incorporate point 6 of the primary motion, so that we're being frank with people about what the impact of that resolution will be, which is the implementation of the 565 minimum rate. So I'll move that as an amendment to the foreshadowed motion. I'll waive my right to speak. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Councillor Steer will second that motion.
Okay, Councillor Steer is happy to second the incorporation of point 6 of the primary motion into...
Oh, sorry.
No, that's...
Councillor Byrne, I withdraw that. I thought I was seconding Councillor Hesse's motion because yours is an amendment rather than a motion. Confused with the language. I withdraw my support for that one. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Well, just to avoid confusion, I'm happy to waive the right to have the amendment debated immediately. Councillor Steer will become the seconder for the foreshadowed motion. Councillor Steer, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Councillors, we've had a lot of rates bandied about at our various meetings. Everything from $565 is the base rate to $850 is the base rate, with $790 somewhere in between. Now, what is the base rate? The base rate is the rate that people pay when they don't live on land. That is apartment dwellers in this local government area. And as we all know, that apartments are the fastest growing kind of construction that is happening in this area. There will be thousands of apartments, whether we are currently being built, and thousands more to be built in the future. It's a regressive tax, the base rate, because it's a fixed rate that is not related to anything, including the unimproved land value, which applies to the boarding houses, the residential houses, and the commercial sites of our local government area. And people who live in apartments actually get less services. They don't get, because they have different arrangements in relation to waste collection, and they usually don't have verges that need to be mowed. They can take advantage of all of our social services, but in terms of the basics that we go on about so much at council, they get less. Why should they be asked to subsidise people sitting on land that is worth upwards of $1 million, as most properties are now worth in our local government area? We can fix the pain, and I haven't noticed this in any of the motions. We can fix the pain if there is any rates increase by bringing it in over 4 years. But that is only a band-aid solution. What we really need to do is revisit the whole mess of amalgamation. We have heard that services are declining and that residents are complaining. However, with this increase in the base rate to $850, that will not improve, because the overall revenue from rates will not be increased. It will just be, the amounts that people pay will simply be changed without any benefit in increasing rates. The only way we'll increase rates is to increase the number of dwellings in this area, and that is being done via the apartments. If the apartments pay less, there's so many of them that it ends up being more anyway. But then it's based very fair based on there. I'd also like to point out that in the past, distinguished Labor MPs such as Joe Halen have criticised rates harmonisation and have attacked the amalgamation for causing the increase in rates.
Councillor Steer, your time has
Follow
expired.
Joe's example and vote for Councillor Hesse's motion.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Now, Councillor De Cruz, I'll come to you in a moment because I know you had a question. Councillors, I note that we've had 2 speakers for and 2 speakers against the primary motion.
Mayor, I move the motion be put.
Councillor Drury is moving.
Before you do that, I'd like to move an amendment to the primary motion.
Well, I'll just seek advice from the council officers in regards to, so Councillor Drury has moved that the motion be put. Subsequent to that, and before it can be dealt with, Councillor Kiat is seeking to move an amendment. I'll just seek advice from the General Manager about whether I need to deal with the motion to put the motion first.
And I'd like to ask some questions about that motion.
I'll just call the meeting to order. I'll go to the General Manager.
Difficult though it may be, Mayor, once a procedural motion that the motion be put is moved, you are required to act on that procedural motion.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a seconder for the motion? I'm happy to second it, just so we can consider it. So I'll second the Drury motion, that the motion be put. So councillors, this is just a procedural motion. If you'd like to just vote now so that we can all conclude the meeting, then you can vote for this. If you think it'd be good to go a bit longer, then you can vote against it. So all those in favour of the motion, that the motion be put, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support, I have councillors Passis, Drury, Racidi, McKenna, Macri, Iskander, York, and myself. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. Against, I have councillors Stamoulis, De Cruz, Lockie, Kiat, Hesse, Porteous. Councillor Steer, are you against the motion?
I'm against.
Okay, Councillor Steer is against. So 4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And against, we have 7. That has been carried. I'll seek advice from the General Manager. Is it now my requirement as Chair to put the motion?
Unfortunately, in these circumstances, yes, it is your requirement to put the motion.
Could I just get a clarification, please, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Porteous.
Did you as Mayor vote for this to be put without further debate?
Yes, that's correct.
So you're basically saying that you do not want to have any further debate.
Point of order, Mayor. There is no.
It's absolutely shameful.
Point of order. This is disorderly.
Liberals and the Conservative Independents should be ashamed of themselves. It needs debate and you are shutting down debate. Shameful, absolutely shameful.
Councillor Porteous, you've been warned. I'll now put the primary motion. If the primary motion is defeated, then we'll deal with the foreshadowed motion. All those in favour of the primary motion, please raise your hands and keep them raised. I have in support councillors Drury, Racidi, McKenna, Macri, Iskander, York, and myself. Councillor Lockie, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm for.
And Councillor Lockie is in support as well.
I think you've got Councillor Kiat, unless I'm wrong as well. Did you get him?
I'll just recommit that. I'm sorry, I got confused. It was difficult for me to see. So all those in favour of the primary motion, moved by Councillor Macri, seconded by Councillor Drury, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support, I have Councillors Drury, Lockie, Racidi, McKenna. Councillor Kiat, are you in support of the motion?
No, I wanted my amendment to be considered, Mayor.
Sorry?
No, look, I wanted my amendment to be considered, so I won't be voting for it.
Okay, so I'll keep going. So in support, I have councillors Drury, Lockie, Racidi, McKenna, Macri, Iskander, York, and myself. All those against, please raise your hands and keep them raised. In support Against the motion, I have councillors Stamoulis, De Cruz, Passos, Kiat, Hesse, Porteous. Councillor Steer, are you against the motion?
I'm against.
And Steer? So for the motion, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Against, there are 7. The motion is carried. I declare the meeting closed.